All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into something that's, well, it's pretty structured, and for a lot of people it's going to sound really controversial. We're talking about the approach to marriage laid out by counselor and Reverend Juan M. Perez in his Rules for Couples. So let's dive right into this framework because it really challenges some of the most common ideas we have about relationships.
And really, this whole system is built around one single provocative question. What if the very foundation of modern marriage, that feeling of being in love, is actually its biggest weakness?
So the author points to what he calls the fundamental marriage misconception. And the idea here is pretty simple. Good feelings by themselves are just not enough. He argues they're actually destined to fail as the foundation for a real, lifelong relationship. And he is incredibly direct about this. He basically says, look, if how you feel about someone is your only reason for marrying them, you might as well just date forever. Because in his view, marriage isn't really about feelings. It's about commitment. It's about hard work.
So what's the number one mistake people make? According to him, it's this silent expectation that our partners should just, know how to be a good husband or a good wife. And that assumption, he says, is a one-way ticket to frustration.
Okay, so if just knowing is out, then what's the alternative? Well, his answer is a system. He argues that what's missing from most marriages isn't love, it's structure, discipline, and a clear, written-down plan.
Now, to even begin to understand the system, you kind of have to learn its language first. The author takes a bunch of common words we use all the time in relationships and gives them very specific new meanings. Think of it like learning a new dialect. So let's start with a couple of the most important ones.
All right, first up, family versus relatives. This is a big one. In this system, your family is only your spouse and your minor children. That's it. Everyone else, your parents, your siblings, your cousins, they're relatives. And the author is really clear that confusing these two categories is a huge source of problems in a marriage.
Okay, next definition, rights versus privileges. A right is something you are owed in a marriage. Think faithfulness, for example. But a privilege is something that's chosen, something that's earned. And here's the kicker. He says privileges have to be reciprocal. You don't just give them away without getting something in return.
And this next one, this is a huge one. Forgiveness is not the same thing as pardoning. See, to pardon someone is just to let them off the hook, remove the punishment. He actually calls that stupid in a marriage. True forgiveness, in this framework, requires the person who did wrong to actually accept a consequence for what they did.
So, okay, we've got our new vocabulary down, but what does this actually look like in practice, day to day? Well, let's get into the nitty-gritty, the specific rules that he lays out as the blueprint for how you should behave.
When it comes to communication, the rules are incredibly direct, and they're non-negotiable. For example, honesty has to be absolute. You never say yes when you mean no. And when you argue, it's not about winning. The whole point is to find a solution that's good for the relationship, not for you.
And then there are the rules around boundaries and technology, which are all about total transparency. I mean, we're talking sharing all passcodes, all passwords, and get this, never having a friend of the opposite sex unless your spouse explicitly approves.
The finances are just as locked down. It's simple. All money from both people goes into one single mutual account, period. And you don't spend any of that money unless both of you agree on it beforehand.
Okay, so remember that whole thing about forgiving versus pardoning? Here's how true forgiveness actually works step by step. First, the person who messed up has to actually ask for forgiveness. Then, step 2, the person who was wronged gets to set a consequence. And finally, if and only if the offender follows through with that consequence, is the issue truly over and released.
So you're probably thinking, wow, these rules are so rigid. And they are, but they're not just random. They're all built on a few core beliefs, a few guiding principles that really get to the why behind this whole system.
Here's the first big principle. People do what they do because they believe what they believe. It's that simple. You can say you believe one thing, but your actions, well, actions speak louder than words. According to the author, your behavior is the only thing that reveals what you truly believe.
And that leads to a really powerful takeaway, right? If you want to change someone's behavior for good, you can't just focus on the action. You have to change their core beliefs. Just getting someone to act differently for a little while is pretty much meaningless if there's no real change in their character.
Okay, here's another one that really pushes back against what a lot of us are taught. In this system, respect is not deserved, it is earned. It's not something you're just automatically entitled to when you enter a relationship.
So, how do you earn it then? Well, it starts with respecting yourself, and you show that through disciplined actions, by keeping your word, by being a person of integrity. It's about behaving respectfully, even towards people you feel don't deserve it.
And all of this, the rules, the definitions, the principles, it's all building to one final critical point. This is probably the most repeated theme in the entire book. It's about the link between consequences and commitment. And here it is. This is the absolute central pillar of this whole thing. Where there are no consequences, there is permission. He says this over and over. And the logic is really straightforward. If someone does something wrong and nothing happens to them, you've basically just given them permission to do it again.
So in this way of thinking, doing nothing is actually doing something. When you fail to set a consequence, you're not being neutral or taking the high road. No, you are actively enabling that bad behavior. You're giving it the green light to continue.
And this really brings us full circle, right back to the beginning. The ultimate goal of this entire system isn't love in the fuzzy feeling sense. It's not even happiness, really. The goal is a lifelong commitment. And all these rules, all these definitions, all these consequences, they're just tools. They're tools designed to protect that commitment no matter what.
Which of course leaves us with a big question to think about. Is having a strict rulebook like this the actual key to marital stability? Is it the best way to protect that lifelong commitment? Or does a system this rigid end up crushing the very spontaneity and romance that so many of us want in a relationship? That's really the question this whole framework leaves you with.